Okay. So we tend to be a little bit intellectual, a little bit academia. Oh my gosh, this is a disaster.
You can start over if you want.
Okay. Just start over. Okay.
Just say welcome first. Say hello, welcome.
Okay. Welcome to our corner of the internet where we get minimal likes, near no followers, and we get a little bit academic, a little bit nerdy, a little bit fun and dorky, and we talk about philosophical things.
Love it. Maybe some therapy, maybe some philosophy.
Yep. So, as two therapists inching toward death every moment, a lot of thoughts come up.
We thought, what would be the best thing to start on if we were going to have a random podcast? Why not death? Why not start at the end? Let's start at the end and then go backwards.
Yeah, you start at the end.
That's right.
So as two people who are very indoctrinated in evangelical culture, the evangelical mindset and beliefs and all of that, what do we do with this concept of death now that we're a little bit more humble in our beliefs?
That is a really good question. I feel like everyone wrestles with the question of death. I think it's easy if you have a boxed answer that's like maybe you were raised with like evangelicalism where we're like, oh, I totally know what will happen when I die. Like it's very obvious. Like I was sitting as like when I would get bored in church as like probably like 7-year-old, I used to open up the Bible that was like in the pew and I would read like that part in Revelation that talks about like the golden streets. And in my mind, like I was like, oh, there's rubies and gold or whatever. And I would just like reread that because my imagination was like, okay, so this is like the cool description of like where we go. And it made perfect sense at the time.
Was death on your radar at that time?
Yeah, I think I was born this way. Is that not normal?
Okay. I'm like, I was drawing on the back of like the attendance cards at that age in my church. like
tic-tac-toe.
We had like those golf pencils in the back of the pews, you know, and then there were these attendance cards. You could write prayer requests on them. There were offering envelopes that my brother and I would like open up and like fold up and stuff. And like we were making a little rat's nest in our seats. But you were reading about what heaven is going to be like. Okay, talk about a Baptist.
I've been very responsible for a long time with big questions.
Okay.
So you weren't thinking about death then as a 7-year-old?
No, I was more concerned about trying not to sin or like trying not to mess up. That was like on my radar.
Do you know the secondary? So I've got like the input from Revelations, and then the secondary thing that impacted me pretty strongly. You're not going to guess this. Was the movie All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Oh my God.
From the 80s. And like, there's like a scene of heaven, you know, there's clouds and light and there's the dogs that go to heaven. And I will tell you, like, I know in the moment I was watching it, for me, it was real. Like, definitely that's what heaven is. So
yeah,
that all made sense. It kind of collaborated with the Revelations and formed this like very nice picture.
Just like the whole thing about it is that you become so future oriented that you kind of lose sight about what's going on here and now, you know? So like for me, being concerned with like not sinning or like not messing up and stuff like that, that was so after death, I wouldn't like go to hell or whatever. So like any type of present orientation was like trying to prevent something bad in the future, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like nowadays when it's all about like focus on the moment and mindfulness and reducing worry by, you know, getting in touch with the moment and what's around you and stuff like that. That was such a foreign concept to me when I was like really indoctrinated at a young age, because it was like, you're always trying to prevent something, you know? So maybe I was thinking about death that whole time. Or thinking about making sure I got taken in the rapture.
Yeah.
But again,
yeah,
events like me trying to prevent stuff. Yeah, I think it was more on my radar than I would give myself credit for or something.
It sounds like more of like an avoidance of punishment or
Yeah.
the bad.
Yep.
Then I was over here like, well, how great it will be, because I just presumed I was
Yes.
already going.
Must be nice.
Either.
Must be nice.
And you were like, I gotta get in.
Do you want to hear like a cringe evangelical moment?
Yes.
So I was so like secure that I knew the answers and like, you know, no, this is how it's gonna be. And like I would read these like apologetics manuals about stuff and all that. So someone was telling me that like it was about a pet like potentially dying or something like that. And I'm
Well,
like,
let's go to heaven.
my answer wasn't very nice. I was like, so I had just like read this manual about this. It was like this evangelical philosophy or whatever, where someone was saying like the soul is like something to be saved, yet the spirit is kind of like our battery, basically. Like the spirit is like what keeps us going and stuff like that. And then the flesh, we don't talk about the flesh, right?
Yes.
So I was like,
It's
well,
like basically like not an issue. The flesh
yeah.
is like
Ignore
leftovers.
be gluttonous, do what you want. Like as long as your soul's in the right place, that's all you have to worry about. But I forget if this is like a family member of mine or what, but this was years ago that I was like, well, animals don't have souls, they only have spirits. So once that like battery runs out, it basically kind of like ceases to exist. So the hope of seeing your dog in heaven, like that's not a real thing because they don't actually have souls. And I look back on that and I'm like, that was the meanest thing I could ever say to someone. Like, that is terrible that I said that. And it was all coming from a place of being so sure. And
my gosh, yes.
Information. I don't care about your emotions. And like, I just look back on that. I don't even remember who I said that to, but I was like, that was so mean. And it was just like me trying to look smart and theological. And yeah, just using that information as a weapon. It's so bad. Like, I'm so embarrassed.
Okay, so here's where our podcast turns into a little bit of psychology too. So it's not Maslow, but what's the psychology development theorist that talks about
Eric
like
Erickson?
Yeah, I'm probably thinking Erickson, but like, do you think that
or
you would
Piaget?
Okay, we're gonna have to like edit this and I'll have to look smarter, because like if I was gonna look like an expert, I would already be able to quote this off. But
just Google it real quick.
Okay, hold on. I'm looking.
Anything can be edited.
We'll have
just
to
like
edit this.
try not to move so that when you cut it out, we're like in the same spot.
No, because it would be better to show the world that we don't know.
No, you can keep this in. I'm all right with that. I'm like, just Google it. Trademark
Stages of development thinking. Cognitive. Yeah, I'm thinking of stages of cognitive. Okay, yeah. I think that I'm thinking of Piaget's stages of cognitive development. Okay, so hold on. Let me see. Would that be like concrete operational from 7 to 11? Where now I gotta Google concrete operational. I'm just thinking like, to give you a little compassion too, like, was there something in your development? Okay, concrete is cognitive development using logic in concrete ways. You know, conservation properties are the same, even if the form of the reversibility, I'm reading it now. But like, I'm just wondering if it made sense in your mind, because of sort of the psychological development stage you're in, that heaven had rules.
Yeah.
And you were just following the rules about dogs instead of what would be probably next on the developmental spectrum of thinking, which would have been a more complex nuance. Like, well, actually, I don't know what the rules for heaven are. And maybe like I should consider my moral compass. And if God is moral, maybe the pets could get in, and there's some complex. Like, what do you think?
Well, the thing about it is that I said that when I was like 23. that that would be like compassionate had it happened when I was like 10. But
Valid.
didn't you tell me something recently? Or it wasn't recent, but like you told me something about how like evangelicals don't have the critical thinking skills that like other people develop naturally.
Well, I think there's a presumption that there's a theory that if you grow up in a high control religious thinking pattern of black and white, and it has to be this one way, and like complexity is a threat, it makes sense that you as a 23-year-old evangelical would still be, because I would have too. That is something that would have easily, probably did come out of my mouth about heaven. Maybe it wasn't what their dogs go, but certainly who was in and who was out. I was definitely spouting out at 23. And it was very specific nuances to like, oh no, like these people aren't in heaven. I mean, you're talking like Catholic, like Mormon, everybody who wasn't the straight road.
Yes.
So yeah, even
though
we should have or could have developed out of that stage of thinking, I think with religion, we were still in a very black and white, concrete operational stage.
Yeah. Yeah. Like honestly, the critical thinking part or whatever, I feel, and in my own personal experience, gets stunted because you're so set on it's because the Bible said that, and like there's the literal answer, and I'm not going to entertain any other sources of information or any other perspectives. You can tell me them, but that's going to hit a wall because I don't want to be exposed to anything that's like not on this very narrow path, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
and it's getting reinforced for you over and over. I see it as like a funnel. This is my concept right now. Like you were just a person, and then you got in the funnel, and the more you were, it all reinforces itself by everybody's in the community, all that.
Yeah. I think that's why deconstruction can be so daunting, because now there's like all these possibilities, you know, or like you exposing yourself to material that's a little bit more vague or nuanced or like not knowing, like we're not made to deal with a lot of that nuance, you know, or like as a kid, questions about death, right? The answer was always ask Jesus when you get there. You know,
very convenient.
Like, yeah, it's too late at that time, number one. And number two, I'm asking like a scientific question, you know, and it's like, oh, just ask Jesus when you get there. You know, there wasn't like, oh, like, let's look into that. No, I'm also saying, you know, this was before the internet was widely available. So nowadays it's like, oh, let me whip out this computer I have in my pocket.
What does Chat GPT say about heaven?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Let me ask my friend Google, trademark, copyright for the sake of the podcast.
Which I think is a piece of why there's so many people experiencing deconstruction in our generation. You know?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Because maybe before that, there wouldn't have been so many sources to explore, but like we got hit with the high control, it has to be with and we got exposed to the internet in the same like developmental phase, and like it wasn't good for our single line of thinking. There's just too many options out there.
It's a gift and a curse to be exposed to so much information, you know? Yeah. But like, if you're exposed to this much information and still in a very like closed type of group or something like that, there's more of a filter of like, no, you can't follow these accounts. You can't read from these authors and stuff like that. Yeah. So like slowly branching out and like reading stuff that like, you know, might have been forbidden before, it can feel really risky and weird.
Well, go back to the original question, like, what do you do now about the question of death? Yeah. In this space?
Like for me, just like today, this could change.
Today, it's ever changing.
Yeah.
Today is Wednesday.
Today, I have the humility to say these are questions that have been debated since the beginning of time. And there are religions built based around this question, you know? So
there are.
I do not pretend to have the answer to any of it, you know? Like there's some ideas about it that like bring more comfort or that can like help in a grieving process or something like that. But for me to say, this is what happens after death, like how can I be so presumptuous and think I know when no one has figured out the answer this whole time? And the people that say they do, they're just acting like they do. I walked away from them a long time ago.
They do not know,
No, yeah.
even if they think they know.
Newsflash. Yeah.
Honestly, because no one has died that can come back and tell us.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
allegedly.
Well, hold on. Have you ever read those books about like how I forget what it's called. How this kid like died and supposedly went to heaven and then came back and was like talking about what it was like and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
near-death
yellow book.
experiences. I think people get a lot of benefit from reading about them.
Yeah.
But like as I've observed that like some people are like, well, I saw Jesus, for sure Christianity is true. But like people who are in other countries with other religious orientations, by the way, like they see their spiritual leader in heaven. You know,
Yeah.
like it's not like Jesus is being seen across the board.
Yeah. Could it be a projection of their limbic system and their beliefs that they're seeing in that like dream state?
I wouldn't. So this is where I get in trouble with my more mystical friends sometimes because I'll be like, it's the science, follow that. It's their projection. It's all explainable. And then they're like, well, Jennifer, that's really arrogant of you to assume because this is meaningful to me and it felt real to me. So I would never tell someone like, it definitely wasn't Jesus. Like if it was Jesus, you, whatever, that's your experience. But also my brain goes to the science and the explanation that makes me, which is like, great, that's a meaning making tool for you. And also maybe your brain was something.
Yeah.
Like I think both can be true.
Sure. Yeah. I think that helps you have like a more compassionate reaction to what your friend is sharing with you. And then at the same time, it keeps you from being so hard on yourself for you not having those same experiences. And like that's a really common experience for people in these circles of like, how come other people are having these like supernatural encounters, or like how come they're receiving these like messages from God and stuff like that, and I'm not, you know, like there tends to be that struggle, you know. So having that thing of like, well, that was meaningful to that person, or like maybe that helped the community that they're a part of or something like that. Like it's you know, compassion towards them, and then to yourself too, of like, you know, maybe the science doesn't connect that way for me.
I agree that you can hold empathy for both parties.
Yeah.
And extend. It's like the 23-year-olds in us that can kind of see across and be like, that is meaningful to you, and I'm here with you in that.
Yep.
And maybe it won't even, maybe it's not okay, like they don't need to say my science rationale because it's too much for them, especially if it's a real grief they've lived through. But I'm allowed to have that thought, and you know, like that is my meaning making system. So like, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't. So going back to my thing that I said to the person about their dog, like I wouldn't dare call anything I said science. It was more like information, but I could have used the balance of some empathy there and just been like, you know, hopefully one day you'll be reunited with them, you know, instead of being like information. Like that didn't help anyone to be like that, you know.
Actually, I think that the loss of empathy and the ability to reclaim it is probably my number one on the pro list of leaving evangelicalism. That's number one, because there were so many things in evangelicalism that I was forced to like justify not having empathy, justify saying like really harsh, terrible things about other people and their spiritual like destiny or whatever. And it cost me empathy. And I knew it because I could feel like, man, this doesn't feel good, but I have to believe it and say it because like it has to be true. That's a pro of leaving to me. It's like, guess what? I can be empathetic towards everyone now, including myself, and more open-minded about a lot of things that feels better. Yeah.
I feel like in the same boat because it's just like it flows more naturally. Like you can just be kind of like accepting, open hands, open arms, you know, but like when you have a lot to lose and like everything rides on everything like staying in place, you like hold your faith back here or whatever. And it like you just kind of like it's like a defensive
you can
and
feel
offensive.
it.
it's like an offensive mechanism. You're just like shooting it out, but protecting it,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you get to a space where you're like, I can have the humility to not know stuff and to like just be with the person and kind of like reflect back, like, yeah, that sounds really hard. It's just like so much more of a calm approach to be like,
Agree.
acceptance. And people need that. Like,
I know.
there aren't a lot of places in the world where you're just like heard and accepted, or someone being like, dang, that's rough.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know.
Yep.
Okay, here's my kind of like cherry on top with the death thing. Is like, I don't know, like this is where I'm at on a Wednesday. Like, I don't know, like, and I feel really at peace with that. Like, whatever it is will be, will be. No one can tell me. I'm not going to worry about work. I'm not worried that like not figuring it out is going to cost me. Like, because we're not going to, I don't think I'm going to figure it out at this point. But it's like, then it can be anything I need it to be. So if it helps, so sometimes it helps me to imagine that I will be in a heaven-like space and like see people I've lost and that we'll all be together and that like there is this big like reconnection spiritual thing happening. And that feels like almost greedy because it's like, I feel like evangelicalism would be like, well, fine, if you're going to go, then we get heaven. That's for us. And I'm like, on the other side of it, I'm like, actually, you don't own the right for the idea of heaven. So if I want to believe still on this side of things that we all die and go to heaven and see our loved ones, because it works for me. And if I want to imagine that, I will. Thank you.
Yeah.
You don't own that.
Yeah. Have you read this book, The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis?
Yes.
And it's like the grass was cutting people or whatever. Like the people were so uncomfortable in heaven because like they didn't belong there and they got taken there on a bus or whatever. And
yep, I remember that.
I'm just like, what was going on? And whenever they would ask, who living or dead would you like to like have dinner with or whatever, I always said C.S. Lewis. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that was
I used to love C.S. Lewis.
I mean, I still like his literature or whatever, but like not looking at the Chronicles of Narnia or like his sci-fi books or whatever. Out of the Silent Planet, that book was very relevant to me.
I didn't read that one.
It's really good.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to read it now. It was good when I read it, but I was like a different person back then. Anyways, looking at his like apologetics material or looking at something like The Great Divorce, I'm like, okay, this is one person's illustration, one person's idea of this and stuff like that. But it's just like, it's kind of like a dark view. That book was so dark because it's like, heaven was actually painful for the people that didn't belong there or something like that. And they chose to go back to hell on their bus or whatever because they were so uncomfortable there.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just like, wow.
I think I was reading The Great Divorce around the same time I was reading Dante's Inferno in high school.
You read that in high school?
Yes. The imagery of hell.
I took a whole C.S. Lewis class in my undergrad. Yeah. So I read like 6 or 7 C.S. Lewis books in like a month because my college was like reduced. It was like a quick program basically. So it was accelerated. So I read all these C.S. Lewis books at once. And The Great Divorce was just so dark. Like really like us versus them, kind of like outsider stuff. And it was like, hey, if you want to be here in heaven, all you have to do is X, Y, or Z, but these people aren't accepting it. So heaven actually sucks for them. They're happier in their like hell,
It's quite, it kind of goes down differently when you take a evangelical concept and wrap it up with like a very skilled literary talented author, because he had a way of describing that and putting it in your imagination that really like that will go deeper, I think, than a Bible verse, because you're like the blades of grass, like you're there in the moment, you're like, well, this is real for sure.
And there's like fog and dew on the grass, and so I want to go back and read that again. Like there's certain things that I want to go back and read now that I'm kind of able to loosen the reins a little bit, and just kind of like look at things from a little bit more of a logical perspective instead of being like, I have to agree with C.S. Lewis because he wrote Mere Christianity. And like, that's it,
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
but
I still think it goes back to the concept of imagination too. Like in the stages of life where I was reading those books, whatever I imagined, because when you're reading, I just thought of this reading to my son, like why reading is better than a video game or a movie. Because when you're reading, it's your imagination is taking these descriptive words and painting a picture in your mind by itself versus when we're seeing it on a screen, like that's being done for you. And I think
yeah.
good for you to be able to imagine. But it's like interesting to think about when I used to read, it was real. Like if I read a description in a book, I don't think my mind was as adept at like recognizing this is a story an author is painting versus this is happening right now. And so like, we have EMDR. So like I already like riffed on a little the difference between being traumatized by a story an author is telling because it happens in your imagination. It's happening right now. And your system and your beliefs and your experience is like, this is actually happening to this person right now. When really it is a description of something that happened a long time ago. But the same with like C.S. Lewis, like the imagined, oh my God, quick soapbox. This is my issue with the Chosen series.
Oh my God.
We're going to go here. To me, the Chosen series is an imagined reality. But when and this was how it was for me watching like the movie Mel Gibson where he's dying on the cross.
Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
In my mind, there may as well have been a CNN camera at the scene that I was watching.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching what I believe to be an exact replication of what happened. And I feel like everyone watching The Chosen is like, this is exact. It's not.
Yeah. But like The Chosen, I think people are like, yeah, they actually chose a guy that looks Middle Eastern and they actually like speak the language from back then and stuff. That like people are really receptive towards it because it's like, this isn't your whitewashed Bible story, which it ends up being. It like just
it's American.
Yeah, because of
totally American evangelical story.
Sure. Yeah. But people are like, oh, this is different though. Like they actually are recreating this stuff. Yeah. And The Passion of the Christ, I was so young when that came out. It was rated R, And so like I was really young and was like underage to watch a rated R movie going there. I just remember like everyone so emotional during that movie and like you knew all the like behind the scenes stuff of like that's actually Mel Gibson's hand nailing.
But then Mel Gibson, like, didn't he like divorce his wife with like 12 kids or something?
Oh my God.
He had a personal falling out since then.
I don't know.
I know, but the thing is, like, even this is probably too much of a tangent, but I have to say it. Like, the script they're basing The Chosen off of is based on, an English translation of an Aramaic Greek text that was written down decades. Like, it's just such a crazy jump between what my mind used to think, which is like, this is a video of something that happened. And recognizing this is an interpretation of a writing. There was an interpretation of a writing that someone said that someone copied off of. It was like text. And it just bothers me when people are so quick to assume they have been seeing something real. And I'm like, it's not any more real than the blades of grass. That's
It's not a primary source of information, but like I think since we're so used to everything being filmed, I mean, like there's a car crash and people start filming people's confrontations and like, we're exposed to so much like primary sources and material and stuff like that. It's like it's hard to differentiate between something that has like really good production and like it being like an actual representation of stuff and everything like that. Like yeah. It's tricky.
Yeah, that's a tangent.
I feel like the secret to like so much of this is humility. Like, and when I was in the evangelical world, that was the key to everything. Like, you have to be humble, don't exalt yourself because you will be humbled as a result, like,
Yeah.
we need to get smaller so that Christ might get bigger, like there's just like so much stuff, like, putting others before you, and, look how Jesus did it. He didn't consider himself to be above anyone and stuff like that. Like, I think there's a lot of merit in that, like in a humanistic space.
Yeah.
And so, like, for me to say the key to everything is humility, like, I think it's like very reminiscent about when I thought I had all the answers and stuff like that. But like, it's like it takes on an opposite flavor, because if I'm saying like nowadays you have to be humble about stuff, it's a whole lot of, accepting that other people have different perspectives, and like, okay, yeah, I never thought about that before. I see why that's important to you. Or having the humility to be like, I don't have the concrete answers, and that's okay. I might have some ideas, but they're not concrete answers. I just think it's really important to approach things with humility, and to, to be like, yeah, we actually don't know. And if people are acting like they do, they don't.
Do you think that being a therapist has like altered that humility experience for you? Because I think it has for me times 1,000.
Yeah, for sure. Like, when I had a client tell me, if you only have a hammer, don't you see everything as a nail? Like, regarding my like niche as a therapist, that was a very humbling experience to be like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I do need to take a step back and check myself, just treatment wise. Right. But looking at just like other areas of my life, am I seeing this stuff as nails because I only have like this limited amount of tools or this limited amount of understanding? Probably, So having the humility to like, understand that other people have other perspectives, and they're like, they can disagree with you. It's okay. It feels a lot less risky now. Cause like before, if someone disagreed with me, their life was in danger,
Exactly.
But nowadays, if they disagree with me, rightfully so, because that's their perspective, and I don't have all the concrete answers. Like, it's okay.
Well, plus I think we have a bonus because I think in our field there's so much like need for learning distress tolerance and learning how to like we're trying to help people like be okay even in difficult circumstances, and like that is difficult to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change the circumstance. It just sucks. It's really crap. But like, so as a therapist, like you really get put into like a different challenge to hold that with someone, knowing like empathy is all we have right now. Like, I'm here as a human with you. And so when you do that as a job and then find that you disagree with someone intellectually, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, to me, it's a benefit of the work to be with people who see things differently than me, because like you're like the empathy that got robbed from me intellectually, or like that I got trained out of me by being right, has been, it's been like an anecdote, I think. And every time I feel like really strongly about like, I'm so angry at this group of people because like they're doing this and I disagree with it, and I just want to go into that black and white, like they're evil mentality, like this group of people that think this way. I mean, it could even be evangelicals, like they are the enemy because they think this way. And I can't get too far. And then I have someone in my like office who is different than me, and I see their humanity, and we do this like really, I'm thinking we might have to edit this out now because it feels like it's bordering on disclosure. The summary is, if we keep it, just that like being a therapist has been an antidote to being an evangelical, because I've had to learn how to see people's differences as like part of who they are, that is like not necessarily like
pathological,
black and white.
Yeah. Or, well, as a therapist, we know like we don't have the cure for stuff. Like, I wrote down like on a sticky note back in the day and put it on my desk, like, create space, not change.
I love that.
So it's like, just creating the space to explore stuff and everything, like that's so different from how I was raised, because it was always like find a way to create repentance or like create some sort of change or shift in this person's spirituality, or like them being willing to entertain something, or like, having friendships and reaching out to people and doing stuff in the vein or with the goal of creating change, but like as therapists, it's unethical for us to like go in with that type of agenda, or I think we would be a little bit full of ourselves if we thought we could like legit cure all of these circumstantial problems, or like, someone's mental health struggles, like we can reduce some of it, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah. Realistic and transparent outcomes.
Yeah. But we're not out to cure anyone. You can provide quality therapy and you can reduce some distress that people feel. But
yeah, and it's worth coming for that. Like people need that.
Yeah. But you're not going to cure a person. I think it's insulting to look at people through that like medical model of like, we're going to cure them. But like religion tends to fall into that of like, there's this formula and it's going to fix you, basically, or it's going to fix your eternity of where you're currently headed.
Yeah, that's kind of a naive presupposition.
Yes. Yeah.
Back to death. Like we literally are all going to die, and there's going to be suffering and there's going to be problems. And I guess that's like, right. I find peace in existentialism. Yeah. That would be like my ultimate answer to death. Like, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. It's like, it's better to accept it. It's better to accept it and to accept the unknown than try to change it or like try to fight back against it. Like that's not something that we can effectively manipulate or change.
But I think that someone could have modeled that for me when I was little instead of modeling like high control religion, and it would have benefited. Like I could have found my way there faster.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I wish that I could go back and like not need a cure.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be
Piaget's like, get to the next stage. You're already old enough to be past it.
Then instead, by 11, what was the one after concrete? I had to press back.
Formal, operational.
Formal.
Yeah.
Ages 12 and up. Why won't it let me?
But some adults don't get to that point. Like, sure, with algebra or, whatever. But sometimes with like philosophical stuff, I think there's a lot more comfort in being like in those younger stages of like, I want the answer. So someone give it to me and I'll memorize it. Or like, I remember this youth conference that was like, I'm going to give you this crash course on what to say to God when you are on that judgment stand and he's the judge and Jesus is there to advocate for you. This is your case that you're going to present.
So
and it's like, this is, yeah. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to, I need to know this,
And your pen's running out of ink.
Yes. Yeah. And so like that is very concrete operational of like someone give me the answer so I can remember it and then I'm saved. Like I have to be safe for this. But like, I'm just like, that is such a legalistic view of like, we know the formula to eternity. And how can anyone say that? But like the youth conference was very like, you're going to tell him that
it's so stressful.
Yeah.
High stakes.
Yeah. But nowadays I'm just kind of like,
I can see it in you.
Just accept what you don't know. Like, yeah.
It's a smoking grandma. Like, guys, it turns out we don't know. And we're just going to do the best we can with what we have. And
we're going to put a really good clickbait title on this video. I'm like, we found the answer to death.
Yes, we are.
Yep, tricked you. You made it to the end and we tricked you.
There's nothing.
You're like, oh, do we make it to the end? And it's like, tricked you.
The answer is there's no answer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Try to calm your nervous system into that.
Yep.
Or it's, hold on, formal operational. The ability to think logically, abstractly, and hypothetically.
Yeah.
I would pair that with a lot of nervous system calming that comes with age. Like your ability to self-regulate. That would be my secret answer. We don't know. And because we don't know, we're going to have to give ourselves a big break of like, that's scary and hard and devastating. And so what are we going to do to like bring whatever in the moment comfort we can? Friendships, laughter.
Yep.
Experience life what we can.
We're just
that's
inching towards death at the end of the day. So
we were beginning at the end.
Yep. Well, this topic got minimal likes. So
I
like
hope a
and
dark
subscribe.
corner of the internet.
Yeah.
See it.
No one's gonna see this.
Do you want to say goodbye?
Sure. Thank you for joining us for this presentation on death and deconstruction.
I loved it. So super 5 stars for me.
Yep. 5 stars for me. We got 2 likes so far.
All right. Good luck with this, everyone.
Yep.
We're here
All
for
right.
you.
That's it.
Okay, bye. Oh, I was going to leave the call. I just have to stop.